working with 3 director generals, and even an acting one, making 4. So somebody said if you take him to the 12th floor and you release him, he will land on his feet like a cat. So this is AB in WHO, and then when he was invited to become the Deputy Director General, and then serving as Deputy Director General a couple of times. So after retiring from WHO in 2017, he decided to come back home. And since then, he's been kept busy. He's currently the chairman of the Interim Management Committee of the University of Ghana Medical Center, a member of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, Standards Ambassador for the Ghana Standards Authority. That one I don't know what it is, but it is a title. And chairman of the Drugs Committee and a member of the Food Committee of FDA. And more recently, special advisor to government of Ghana on COVID-19. But he says he's an independent public health consultant. So, ladies and gentlemen, our speaker, Dr. Fiifi Asamoah, who will be speaking to us on the topic, the nexus of politics, power, people, and partnership in promoting good health. Thank you very much. Once again, you are welcome.
This one, slides. Yeah, this one. Okay.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, for your kind and gracious words of introduction. The story is told of a lady who lost the husband. And the husband was not a particularly good husband. But when he was taken to the church for the memorial service, the tribute was too sweet. So it got the lady confused. And she asked one of her children to go and check whether the man in the coffin is their father. For a moment, I wasn't sure it was me that the Vice Chancellor was talking about. Mr. Chairman, Vice Chancellor, Chairman of the University Council, Regional Minister, former professors and Vice Chancellors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the faculty, and since this is Professor Atta's lecture, let me say my brothers and sisters. I'm delighted to be invited to be the 5th guest speaker for the Prof. Atta's Leadership Lecture Series. So allow me to take a few minutes to pay tribute to those who made this possible. First, I wish to thank the Vice Chancellor for nominating me and for helping me select the topic for my lecture. I have no doubt that he nominated me partly because of our long friendship, family and friends. I have known the Vice Chancellor for many, many years, long before he developed a white beard. And I've followed his career, and I'm proud of his achievement and his leadership. Let me make a little confession. Many, many years ago, when I was in the ministry, we had a debate whether colleagues because our plan was to have as many people, as many physicians do their masters in public health. And there was a big debate whether we should support people who want to do a PhD after they've done the master's. And some of us argued that Ghana needed both. So Prof. Japon, thank you for vindicating those of us who believed that Ghana is better off with more people having PhDs in public health. Thank you for making us proud. And I'm speaking also for Dr. Samajay and Dr. Atta and many others. May their souls rest in peace. Secondly, I'm grateful to the University Council for accepting my nomination. I noticed that apart from the very first speaker, all the previous speakers were tall people. So I'm happy that we've gone back to having short people as guest speakers. And I'm grateful to all the special guests who are here with me, who've traveled long distances to come and listen to this lecture. I wanted to single out my special brother and friend, the regional minister, Dr. Lecha. We've been close friends since we first met as first-year students in Legon in 1977. Even then, I knew he would be a very accomplished doctor. But we got much closer during our house job days. This was the early 80s when, as we say, Ghana was hard. And as young doctors, we survived on the generosity of patients and relatives. And from signing excuse duty. And I recall very well, on one occasion, a patient gave the two of us an envelope. He gave the envelope to Dr. Lecha. And when we opened the envelope and we counted, we find out that he's given us a gift of 900 cedis. So it was a little odd because we expected 1,000 cedis. So my instinct was, let's leave it. But Dr. Lecha said, leave it with me, I will sort it out. So the next morning, we went to see the patient and the relative was there. So Dr. Lecha, in his usual diplomatic, smiling baby face, told the man, we're really grateful for the unexpected gift. But how much did you want to give us? So the man replied, 1,000 cedis. And Dr. Lecha said it was short by 100 cedis. It was then that I realized that Dr. Lecha will not only be an accomplished doctor, but also an accomplished businessman and a politician. I'm grateful to the planning committee for all the logistics arrangement, and I'm really glad to see Professor Nana here and my friend Fred Binka and many other friends here. This lecture is dedicated to the memory of Prof. Atta Mills, and the VC has said, but I think it's only proper that I also say a few things about this great man and his leadership qualities. In life, some people are only fully understood when they are no longer with us. And I think it's fair to say Ghanaians appreciate Dr. Mills, Professor Mills better than he was when he was alive. When he was alive, we mocked him, Ekumene, Mr. Doolittle, but when he died, people better appreciated the many projects he initiated, the universities, the hospitals, the roads, his belief in young people, his peace and gentle nature, and his humility. He was in public service for many years, but nobody can associate him with any scandal. He was a proud Fanti, but he was father to all Ghanaians. He was a man of vision and foresight. When he established UHAS and the University of Ghana Medical Center, he knew that they would come handy. His legacies are there for everyone to see. And the purpose of this lecture, as the VC said, is not just to honor his memory, but also to inspire future leaders. The mandate of this school has been to develop innovative solutions to health and diseases in the community. It aims to be a preeminent research and practice-oriented institution dedicated to providing timely biomedical solutions to health challenges in Ghana, and I'm quoting, it seeks to advance knowledge through scholarship, research, and training. So a key role of the school is to train leaders for tomorrow, health leaders for tomorrow. How do you train and prepare leaders for tomorrow when tomorrow is not that clear? How do you predict the future in an ever-changing world? Soldiers are trained to fight the next war. So you don't train soldiers now to fight the First World War. So to some extent, it's the same for the health sector, but it's a little more complicated. Because in health, the old problems don't quite go away. So you are training people not just for the future, but in a way you are also training them to prepare for the past, because the past is never past. So one way of predicting the future is to extrapolate from the present, but that is not an exact science. The last 20, 30 years has been a period of great change and evolution, and there's every evidence that the next 20, 30 years, when the young ones become leaders, will be even more complex and complicated because of a conspiracy of factors. So with your permission, I will quickly go through some of these factors. One is that people are living longer. When I was growing up, the conventional wisdom was that you spend the first 30 years of your life preparing for your career. Then you spend the next 30 years working, and you retire at 60 or around 60, because 60 can be 62, can be 59 and a half, 60. And you die not long after that. So someone dying at 60 was quite acceptable. Now, if you die at 60, we say gone too soon. So it's no longer acceptable that people die at 60. And in fact, in some parts of the world, a significant proportion of the population are above 60. Our health policies and health architecture is largely being shaped by the health of children and, to a large extent, pregnant women. This will not go away, but in the future it will be complicated by the health concerns of the elderly and the old in society. For the old, their main concern is having the functional ability to do basic things, to be able to talk, to walk, to see, to make decisions on your own, but it's also very expensive. So, given that people are living longer, the health challenges will be more complicated than what we are used to. The second factor is that more and more people are living in cities and big towns. There used to be no traffic jams in Ho, but now there are traffic jams in Ho. Our problem has been unplanned urbanization, high population density with limited access to water, poor housing, people living in slums, in kiosks, in containers. We face attendant health problems. And in the future, we're going to see more of these. Air pollution, particularly from cars and means of transport. But what is also disturbing is noise pollution. You can't see it very well, but these are self-made evangelists making noise all the time. It used to be all night session. These days it's all day session. Change in diet. This is particularly true in urban areas. People cook less, and people have access to easy, convenient food. And these foods are more likely to be of less good quality and tend to contain a lot more sugar and salt. Again, because food is more accessible, people eat it more. And it is known that increased consumption of low quality food with high sugar and salt content leads to diabetes, hypertension, heart diseases, and cancers. Lack of exercise. People hardly walk. Our environment is being degraded. Our water bodies are polluted. We are losing our forest. Our food production are all based on chemicals. Addiction is on the increase. In Ghana, we've glamorized alcohol. In Ghana, alcohol is a medicine because it's bitters. And because it's bitters, it is not seen as harmful, but as useful. And that is why I'm told we have not less than 50 different bitters in Ghana. Alomo bitters, Adonko bitters, Passion bitters, Bieja bitters, Kakai bitters. But there's also the phenomenon of many, increasingly more and more people are on medicines for medical reasons. But there are also substance abuse. In recent times, our airwaves, talking about road crashes, injuries. At the same time, our family systems are being destroyed. There are many people living on their own. In some parts of the world, one of the commonest problems is loneliness. So all these point into increasing number of chronic illnesses. But on the demand side, again, Ebola and COVID reminds us that outbreaks have not disappeared. On the demand side, people's expectations are increasing. Now people do not expect to die from the first heart attack. 40 years ago, it was okay to say he died from heart attack. He died from cancer. These days, people say, why? Why should he die from cancer? Why should he die from heart attack? People are expecting that, for example, our hospitals will feel like hotels. People are expecting that they go to hospitals and they have their own room. People are expecting they go to hospitals and they have access to internet. So whilst the demand is increasing, the expectations are also increasing. But of course, we also helped with technology. But technology also comes with its own challenges. One, people no longer accept that the doctor knows best because they read and they seek second opinion. So I'm giving this picture to let you have an idea that yes, we've made progress, but the challenges we face are going to be more complicated and more sophisticated than what we have. So the future leaders are going to have to do more. They have to be more special than those of my generation or the generation before. And the question is, what type of skills, what type of competencies do they need in order to address these challenges? And that really is the reasoning behind the romantic title that the Vice Chancellor suggested to me. And my main point is that moving forward, there are at least 4 areas we need to pay particular attention. One, of course, is the biomedical science part, which is the strength of our current approach. It is important that people are grounded, future leaders are grounded in the basic sciences, in the basic clinical sciences. But more important is that future are not only grounded, but they develop what I call a scientific mind and a scientific approach to solving problems. And a lot of that depends on data. Unfortunately, we're a country where everybody wants to know the science, but we don't seem to be interested in investing in science, in collecting the data, in changing the data to information, and changing information to knowledge and to wisdom. So one area where future leaders need to work more is competencies in dealing with data and having a scientific mind. But the other 3 areas, which is really the meat of my recommendation, is 1, grounding in behavioral sciences, a better understanding of why people behave the way they behave. That is the first. The second is a better understanding of politics and health, how politics affect health and how health affect politics. And the last point is leaders of tomorrow will need to develop their skills to develop partnerships with different sectors and all sorts of groups. So let me briefly elaborate on these 3 areas. The first is understanding why people behave the way they behave. People are the same everywhere, whether Chinese, Ghanaian, short, tall, people are the same everywhere. But people behave differently. It is very difficult to predict people's behavior, but every behavior is logical. I remember a few years ago, a Spanish friend I had explaining behavior to me, and he said he was a farmer and he was employing migrants from Africa who was helping him on his farm. And he said, if you employ an African man, and for them everybody is an African, he's able to collect 100 baskets of orange a day. If you employ an African woman, she's also able to collect 100 baskets a day. But if you put them together, they collect 50. It's rational, but you could not predict. I'm sure you were thinking they will do 200. By putting them together, they produce 50. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why Ghanaians behave the way we behave. And it's important that we understand why Ghanaians behave the way they behave. And I'm talking about the culture, because we need to be culture sensitive in order to understand health. Unfortunately, this is an area that we don't seem to pay a lot of attention. The Ghanaian believes, the Ghanaian is very religious, or I nearly say spiritual, but maybe religious is more like it. The average Ghanaian believes there are supernatural and natural causes of disease and ill health. And in fact, most diseases are caused by a combination of supernatural and natural agents. In other words, every disease has a spiritual dimension. And of course, there are a few that are mainly natural. And because of that, the Ghanaian knows the diseases that are addressed wholly by the modern system and the diseases that require to go beyond the modern system. The Ghanaian believes that any disease where you see blood coming out is hospital matter. But diseases that are chronic, swelling of feet, you have to go beyond the hospital. Many of us believe in witches. We believe a witch can make you sick. And that the only people who can bewitch you are people from your family. Especially your sisters. I don't know why we believe women are more, but men are worse. The Ghanaian believe that you can fall sick if you commit a taboo, and that even God can make you sick. So there's a strong belief that every illness will require some spiritual dimension. And that is why when they are sick, they seek prayers. And yet, our health system doesn't create that space. Of course, there are hospitals with chaplains and all. But there's recognizing the Ghanaian beliefs that even when they are in the hospital, it would be useful to have some spiritual, we don't add that on. So they do it on their own. The Ghanaian believes in signs and symptoms, but they believe many of the signs and symptoms they have, many of the symptoms that you have, will go away after some time. So when they have any illness, their first port of call is self-medication. And you only report when it gets worse. So, most illnesses are presented to our health facilities in a relatively advanced stage. The Ghanaian has a very simplified sense of time. It's either morning, afternoon, evening, and night. And it's either yesterday or 3 days ago or last week or last month. So when they go to the hospital with your symptoms, that is how they respond. When they did okay 3 days ago, are you sure? Oh, it was in January. Traditionally, the fetish priest was the doctor. And a good fetish priest is one who is able to tell you your sickness even before you talk. And he or she spends a lot of time with you. So Ghanaians expect that the Ghanaian physician will spend time with the patient, will talk to the patient, ask questions that may not even be related to what they have. touch them, feel them, spend time with them, and not be judgmental. The Ghanaian believes in medicines and herbs, and they believe medicines do a lot of wonders. We don't believe that medicines expire, and that is why if you have something which is good, you keep it for a long time and even pass it on to relatives who may need it. And of course, we believe medicines go with food. That is why they get confused when you say, take the medicine every 4 hours. We don't have a concept of 4 hours. We have the concept of morning, afternoon, evening. So this may look simple, but because we don't understand our people, it becomes difficult to relate to them. And our usual response is they are difficult. Let me just add 2 more. I can go on and on this, but the point I'm trying to make here is it is important that health professionals understand our cultural context. The average Ghanaian doesn't like being admitted to a hospital, and they will do whatever they can to plead with the doctor, please don't admit me. Can't you do something for me? Why do you have to admit me? But the Ghanaian expects that when they are on admission, the whole family will come and visit. And yet our health facilities are increasingly being built in such a way that people cannot visit because we are not building our culture even into the hospital architecture. That is an important part of healing. The fact that you're in a hospital and the whole family comes to visit is an important part of the therapy. Of course, undergoing surgery is a big deal because we believe once you go under the knife, you are never the same. And when I was a kid, we had a friend who had a hernia operation. And the conventional wisdom was that you don't tackle someone who has a hernia operation when you are playing football. But this guy was scoring goals. And that is why when someone is discharged from hospital, it's called for celebration. And yet we don't make even provision for that type of celebration. I will not talk about Ghanaians and dead bodies. In the Ghanaian culture, showing gratitude is a big deal. You show gratitude to the fetish priest. And that is why offering gifts of food, animals, perfumes to health workers is seen as normal. It's not bribery. In fact, they get offended if you refuse. So the point I'm making here is it's important, this will become more and more important, that future leaders are not only strong in the biomedical sciences. Future leaders must also be grounded in how and the beliefs of our people so that you can relate better to our patients and to communities. I will not go into public health, let me leave it there. Let me now quickly talk a little about politics and health. Health is political because the social determinants majority of what determines your health are political. There are things that are amenable to political intervention, because there are issues like poverty, employment, housing, education. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that these things contribute more to your health than health facilities. Health depends on politics. And yet the conventional wisdom is that health is apolitical. And in fact, most health workers will get offended if you say you are political. You say, I'm not political. And it's partly because our definition of health and definition of politics. Despite the elaborate definition of health by WHO, for most people and for practical terms, health is essentially the absence of diseases. And health is a commodity. So the focus is more on the individual. Sorry, I should have shown this what I was going on. Let me quickly show that so that these are just showing what we believe in, and these are some of the things people expect to see from their health workers. The health system itself is part of the depoliticalization of health, because health is seen as absence of disease, is defined more in a biomedical context, and therefore health is something for health professionals and not something that the whole society is responsible for. And a lot of the time when people are talking about health, they will hardly talk about some of the determinants I've mentioned. Everybody knows that sanitation and health go together, but how often do we link them together? When you hear people talking about health, it's about more infrastructure, more doctors, more nurses, more pharmacists, more technology, and yet the things that help promote health are the food you eat, the air you breathe, where you live, the school you attend, whether you are employed or not, whether you have a stable family life. These are what I'm referring as political, not the politics of government, not just the politics of conflict resolution, but politics as the power and the process by which resources are produced, distributed, and used. Because we know that the poorer you are, the less good health you have. The poorer your housing conditions, the poorer your road system. But because we've seen politics as a relatively dirty, and I can see a few MPs here, so I won't venture into that. But what I like, the Mexicans, they say, and I hope, Honorable, you forgive me, politicians are like air conditioners. They make noise all the time, but they work only half the time. It is important, but that is not what I'm referring to, partly because, fortunately for us in Ghana, our health agenda has been quite consistent, irrespective of the government in power. If you look at the recent manifesto of the two major parties, yes, of course, there were differences, but essentially they were all saying the same thing. primary health care, infrastructure, health insurance. It's all the same thing. So we are lucky that since independence, our strategy, our policy has been consistent. So in terms of political agenda, the issue is how do we move health discussions from discussions on sickness care to discussions of what really promotes good health. And that's some of the things that I've talked about. And that is why the future health leaders need to be politically aware. But they need to also be politically aware because the forces that are responsible for ill health are also powerful forces. Let me just cite two of them. One is tobacco. There's no doubt that smoking of tobacco leads to a lot of health challenges. And yet, stopping tobacco smoking has been difficult until recently. In Ghana, we are lucky. It appears not to be a major problem as in other places. But our problem appears to be with alcohol. We need health professionals of today and tomorrow will need the skills to appreciate that what you are fighting is not, for example, the alcohol industry. You are fighting their lobbyists and the people who have been most vocal against, for example, banning advertisement or pushing advertisement to 8 p.m. has not been the alcohol industry. It's been the media who gets a lot of support from adverts. It's been celebrities who are losing revenue because they cannot fight. And this is the type of political fight that future health leaders have to fight. It's not NPP, NDC politics. It's how do you fight the alcohol industry? How do you fight the industry that is importing sugary fruits, sugary drinks? Because the people who are in that business are powerful forces. You need to develop the political skills to maneuver these fights ahead. So that is what I will say about politics. There's a lot I can say, and I'm sure when we open the floor, there will be a lot more comments on that front. But let me get towards the end of my speech by highlighting one of the areas I'm particularly keen, which is about partnership. Partnership. Working together. Everybody knows that health is a team sport. And like any team sport, football, every player matters. It's not just the captain or the striker. Everyone is needed for the success of the team. And fortunately, that idea is being increasingly recognized in the health sector. Because for far too long, when people even talk about health professionals, they will only mention doctors, nurses, and pharmacists, and the full stop. Forgetting that there are many more health professionals who are making things more successful. Health engineers, administrators, those working in finance. They are all part of the team, and without them, the so-called frontline workers cannot operate. We need to begin to appreciate that we need to work as a team and to recognize what I'll call these lesser sports. But as I said, this is an area that a lot of progress is gone ahead. But of course, a lot more work needs to be done because there's still a lot of professional tribalism. The second area is the need to establish partnership with other sectors. And this is easier said than done, because every sector has its own values, philosophy, modus operandi, and sometimes language. If you're working with the economic sector, the language they understand is money, returns to investment, cost effectiveness, cost efficiency, reducing waste. The health sector cannot work with the economic sector if you don't use this language. So in future, it is not enough for a health professional to appreciate the health language, but you need to understand the economic language, because that is how you can work with the economic sector. To give you another example, increasingly in the context of emergencies, the health sector is learning to work with the security sector. And in many cases, it's been difficult because of different ideology. In the security sector, it's command and control. It's do before you complain. The boss is always right. In the scientific sector, it's about debates and arguments. And sometimes in the scientific sector, the boss is always wrong. So it's important that as we increasingly talk about multisectorial and intersectorial, health professionals begin to learn the language of others. Because otherwise, like in all partnership, in marriage, if you don't understand each other, if you don't speak the same language, if you don't communicate, how do you fight together? But the point I want to really emphasize is about innovation. The last few years have demonstrated that it's almost impossible to have advances in health without innovation. And for innovation to be deployed in a large scale, you need, one, the government sector, but also you need the private sector, you need civil society, and you need academia. But each of these sectors come to the table with their own strengths and also their baggages. If you take the government sector, usually they have the deep pockets and have a larger reach. Without their endorsement, it's very difficult to introduce any new policies, and they also have the regulatory might. But the very nature of the government sector makes it very conservative, risk averse. In the public service, you don't stand out. If you stand out, you'll be brought down. You wait your time, and if you are lucky, you become a director. In the public service, there's nothing like a rising star. A rising star means we knock you out. We all come in a batch, we all live in a batch. So, decisions take a very long time, and innovations in the public sector is difficult, but they are needed to get innovations. Compare that to the private sector, where decisions are taken very quickly, because there's a high appetite for innovation. But because the private sector is not a charity, the bottom line is maximizing profit. And sometimes this gets translated into greed. To some extent, the same with the civil society. They tend to be close to communities and tend to be more agile. But of course, because they feel, or by their very nature, they are seen as watchdogs, they can also be pain in the neck. But one key sector for innovation to happen in the academia. And there's a saying that government agencies know how to do things, but they don't know what to do. Academia knows what to do, but they don't know how to do it. And you need to bring the two together. Especially academia, which is research-oriented, tends to have high appetite for innovation. Especially there's academic freedom, but of course there's a challenge of publish or perish. Innovation requires bringing all these sectors together. And future leaders must understand these different cultures. They must have the competence and the skills to work with these different sectors. The training of future leaders must expose them to all these sectors. We highly train people for the private sector. But in future, since all these sectors must come together, it will be important as part of your training, future training for future leaders. They are exposed not just to the academic culture, the public sector culture, but also the civil society culture and the private sector culture. Our world is becoming a global village. But leaders of tomorrow must remain relevant to local communities. But at the same time, establish partnership nationally and internationally. And that brings me to yours. Yours must be felt locally. Yours must have impact on the communities here. Otherwise, it's not relevant. But at the same time, yours must be a national asset and an international force. And combining those three can be difficult. But that is what yours was set up to do. So, Mr. Chairman, I've talked for a long time, but my point is that the future is going to be challenging. It's important that as we train leaders for tomorrow, we not only ensure that they are grounded in the biomedical science, but they also appreciate behavioral science. They appreciate that politics is not dirty, and health is political, and they recognize that the way forward is partnership. The points I've made are not new or very original. They are the points and the values of yours. Someone said, the more you attempt to change your constitution, the more you appreciate that your forefathers and mothers are very wise people. The more you try to change yours, the more you appreciate the forefathers and the foremothers were very wise when they came up with this. Allow me, therefore, to pay special tribute to the founding fathers and mothers of yours, the pioneer, Vice Chancellor, and his team. I thought you were going to clap. The pioneer faculty members and students who have made yours the way it is. Speaking with my heart as the COVID coordinator, yours is a very young institution, but has played a very important leadership role in all aspects of the response. And people now don't even, when they're talking about yours is treated just like university, the Legon University, or Kane University, and yet yours is only a few years old. this has come about not through an accident, but through the work of many, many people, including the people assembled in this room. So on behalf of the people of Ghana, let me say a big thank you to you. We'll be forever grateful. Long live UHAS. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. You have square. Thank you very much. You have square, conducted by our senior quantity surveyor, Chinyo. UHA Square is made up of faculty and staff and students, and they do very well. And as the speaker said, we are very religious, so we love to have the choral music. That is part of our nature. We've had Dr. Samaba speak to us on a very interesting topic. But what we do here is in the spirit of inculcating the leadership that we talk about, we allow for interaction with the audience. We have, how many microphones are available? You have to catch my eye. And you may never know, I may be a speaker of parliament, so you have to catch my eye, and then I'll point to you to be, for you to have the opportunity to address us. So questions to the speaker, or if you want to comment on the topic, that is very much acceptable. You introduce yourself, and you make your point. And to be as brief as possible so that as many people can have the opportunity to speak. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Robert Kaba. I'm a faculty member here in UHAS. Thank you, Doc, for that insightful presentation. I almost felt like I was in a health policy class because it's really captured everything within the health sector. Having said that, I would need some clarity in terms of policy direction for this country. We all know that over 90% of the disease burden of Ghanaians, they are predominantly primary healthcare issues, upper respiratory tract infections and all that. Yet, in terms of HR policy direction for the health sector, it looks like we are paying more attention to the curative bit of it instead of the preventive. Even though we know if we put in much in terms of investment for the primary health sector, we will have invariably addressed much of the curative problems. So why is it that over the years, even upon decoupling of Ghana Health Service from the Ministry of Health through the Act 525 of 96, and I believe you were also part of the entire process, how come we haven't really made much progress after several years of this endeavor? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc, for such a wonderful presentation. And I think the topic too is very handy, very timely.
Yourself.
Sorry about that. My name is Justice Musa Heto, Bioscience Department, University of Ghana. I'm representing Prof. Public Health, University of Ghana. Thank you. The topic very, very relevant and timely. The reason I'm saying this is because we all know at the moment that we need to be very much concerned about evidence decision-making processes, especially if we want to advance the health status of the country. But it looks like when it comes to data gathering, which is very critical to us understanding what we need to be doing from now and onwards, or what happened in the past, so we can properly prepare for the inevitable, we don't have those sources available to us. So I was very much excited when you spoke about lack of investment in data and as far as scientific world is concerned. So you being in the field for so long a time, unlike me, what are some of the experiences you think we need to work on so that issues relating to data gathering and management and analysis can be improved to aid our health situation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I saw another hand here. Professor Eric Ofori.
Thank you. My name is Professor Eric Ofori, Dean of School of Allied Sciences. Mr. Speaker, I want you to see whether was your view, having looked at the modern trend as you presented, will you support the change in the curriculum run by our programs from typical health gadget to embrace more social science element courses for us to be able to understand these things better?
Thank you. I saw another hand at the back. Yes, the gentleman in the red tie. I hope it's a Liverpool tie.
I'm not a fan of politics, Prof. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank you so much for your presentation. I am Malco, a level 100 medical student. Please, I would like you to, I want to know what are some of the important virtues I need to keep if I want to be very successful like you, even more than you, in order to inspire other people in the future. Thank you.
A level 100 students want to be like you.
Even more than
and
him.
even more than you.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was in level 100 in 1977. Okay. I just want to put it in context. Yes. After the last comment, okay, Paul.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Speaker. My name is Paul Amuna. I'm the Dean of School of Public Health at UHAS. Given the life of service and dedication and leadership that John Evans Atta Mills represents, and given your own extended life of service, right from your early days through your work in the districts to WHO, I'm wondering what advice you have for today's level 100 medical student coming up and the future medical graduate or health graduate in this country in order to continue with what we say we want to achieve in terms of leadership and service. Thank you.
I know there are many more questions. We'll have another round of questions, but if you can respond to these, that would be good. Yep.
Thank you very much for the many interesting questions. The advantage of having a lot of questions that you can choose which ones you answer and which one you dodge. So let me start with the easier one. What do I need to do to be like you? I'm very sure you'll be better than me. I remember many, many years ago, there was a lecture by Prof. F.T. Sai of blessed memory. And I was like you, so I asked him, what do I need to do if I want to be like you? Then he said, I have been privileged, and I'm not sure it's just me. It's the opportunities that I've had. And I think what really has helped me is the opportunities I've had and standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think that is what we need to do to groom young people. But what I also told Prof. Sai that I want to be like you, but of course I want to be taller. The others are more, some are not questions, they are comments. One is to do with how come that after so many years, we appear to be focusing more on curative health. And really that is one of the challenges. When we even instituted primary health care to the community level, it ended up being largely curative. The chip compound was not meant to be where you go for treatment, but it ended up becoming where people go for treatment, and it is linked one with our concept. When people talk about health, it's more the sickness part that we are alluding to, and we haven't taken them to some of the issues I talked about. And unless we move them to the other side to begin to appreciate health is not just when you are sick, but more importantly, even preventing you from being sick. But that is also linked with the fact that for a long time, preventive health has not been sexy. Many, many years ago, when some of us want to do public health, an old professor came to me and said, "Abi, I thought you were good. Why do you want to be Saman Saman?" We haven't really invested and made preventive health, promotive health, as attractive and as sexy as the others. Most people want to be a cardiologist, a hematologist, and because that is where the money is. So really, this for me is one of the limitations of our strategy. And one of my little disappointment with some of the political debate the last year watching is that we are still focusing on that aspect, infrastructure, one district, one hospital, which is fine. We need the hospitals, without hospitals, but we are not paying a lot of attention to these other areas. And the other areas, we just say primary health care, without detailing what are we talking about when we talk about primary health care. But I must say the last few years, it looks like it is gaining more currency, that we need to move more and more away from just looking at hospitals and hospitals and hospitals to look at what will prevent people from using the hospitals in the first place. The National Health Insurance was set up to help us address that, but over time it's also become more curative, because that is small things that people can see. The next one was linked with data. And the question is, what type of incentives do we need to introduce as a people to make the science of data collection more attractive? How, but it starts from, as a country, do we put premium to data? As a country, evaluation, performance assessment are really not our strength. And people talk with no evidence or data and allowed to go scot-free. There is really not a lot of incentives about data collection. I know there's a lot more data collection on maybe even the cocoa trees. We have more than how many health workers do you have, who is getting sick. Quite recently, we've had even data on COVID. So I agree with you that this is one area of our weakness, and it will require also in faculties like this investing in data science and getting people who are interested in this area to bring this up. A lot of these areas, you need a few people to make a change. There was a question as to learning from Prof. Atta Mills and also my own experience. What really, for me, has helped me is the fact that at a very young age, I decided to go and work in the district. The tendency when you finish is to say, I want to stay in Accra and Kumasi or Cape Coast. But the time I spent in the district, as a young doctor, all of a sudden being in charge of a 120-bed hospital. After house job, you are in charge of a hospital, and all of a sudden you are thrown into management. Managing money, managing people stealing things every day. At the district, you become a big fish. I was in the district assembly. meeting chiefs, a young person not married, but people come to you for marriage advice. And sometimes, yes, you are young, you can give. I know I have a cousin who is one of the best marriage counselors I know, but he's a Catholic priest. So one day I approached him and said, how come that you've never been married and you are a very good, you don't have to, his answer is that you don't have to be married, but now I know you can be a Catholic priest and still be married. But so I've gone around your questions, not so much answering them, but I think you've added some emphasis to some of the points that I made. The fact that we need to see health in a much more rounded perspective. And that is why I agree with you that in addition to the biomedical science, we need to add more and more social sciences. Otherwise, we are training people less, and I hope my colleagues will not kill me. We are training people, the typical, let me just talk about doctors. The typical doctor is highly trained, but very narrow. They spend their time in the medical school just reading, learning, and spend the rest of their life specializing. They know very little about life. They don't know about sports, they don't know about culture, they don't know about fashion, they don't know about politics. So they are not really rounded. And our training, yes, it's important we focus on science, but the social sciences are as important as the other sciences. So I will be happy, and I think you're already doing that to some extent, that in the medical curriculum, in our case, we even saw those areas as the soft area. When we were in secondary school, we were laughing at people who were doing arts. The university, we were laughing at people who were doing odontology. But these are some of the skills that you need. The humanities, for a long time, we were making fun of them. But you need that type of grounding to broaden our analysis. And I hope we're going to be able to train the future doctors not to be as narrow as some of us were. Very, very narrow. And they are untrainable. Well, they don't know anything about medicine. You start a conversation with them, it ends in medicine. So I agree that we need to, but of course the basics are still necessary. The scientific basis are still necessary because science will still be very, very important. So I've not quite answered all the questions, but I think you've made the point I wanted to make in some cases.
Thank you very much. We'll take another round of questions and comments. I can see somebody in a smock in the middle seats there.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for the lecture. My name is Philip Afeti Koto. I'm an assistant registrar here in UHAS. The nexus, and then promoting good health. I think that promoting good health thrives on empirical research. So my question is, to what extent do you think what I would call the Fiifi bar nexus, how can we bend it to support health research or research in general. Because as the COVID-19 coordinator, as you said, for the nation, I'm sure COVID has come to underscore the fact that we need research as a nation. So how can we bend this nexus to research funding nationally? Thank you.
Zabinka.
I'm Fred Binka, still in the service of UHAS as a clinical epidemiologist. I want to raise one particular issue that I think is impeding the way we move forward. You've talked about the social sciences, completely agree with that. You've talked about innovation, and I do support that. And you've also raised the issues on promotive and preventive care. The services as they are currently structured will find it difficult to extend into those areas. I think one of the ways in which they can do that is through the partnership, the third pillar that you were talking about partnerships. But the biggest challenge of our partnerships is that if it's the ministry that is driving the partnerships, the other partners expect the ministry to pay for the activities that are needed. And those partners don't actually have budgets that will promote anything. And so, in the end, we all know that for people to live well, have a good environment and so on, it's not a doctor in the clinic that is going to make it happen. It is those partners that will bring to the table the issues of nutrition, good housing, good sanitation, and so on. How do we build this partnership? And what are some of the examples you have seen over the years that promote the partnership to solve these problems?
Thank you very much. I recognize Professor Ansan.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Samwaba, for such an excellent lecture. I want to link up your role now as the coordinator for the COVID-19 response with this topic you have just given us a lecture on. In your view, Ghana is seen as being a country that has really done things right. Which of these areas that you've talked about, the nexus of politics, power, people, and partnership, do you recognize has contributed to Ghana's success in responding to this COVID-19? Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize Mr. Solomon Pamford. Yes.
Thank you very much, Speaker, for that panoramic treatment of the subject. My name is Solomon Pamford, Registrar, University of Energy and Natural Resources. Respectfully, reference to an aspect of your delivery which underscored the lack of recognition for our own traditional tenets, even in the design of our medical architecture. May I respectfully solicit your general comments on the use and inculcation of our traditional medicine, our own preparations in the formal health delivery system. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a hand at the back there. I cannot see the face, but please attend to him.
Thank you very much. My name is Kusi Mensa Emmanuel, an alumni of this institution. And then I was the organizer for the National Public Health Summit that we hosted last year, which hosted Professor Binka and then Professor Nuoza. And then that was just 2 days before COVID entered Ghana, and then the president issued that we should all go home. And then at the summit, a lot of things came up, and then I remember Professor Binka actually stating that he talked on communicable and non-communicable diseases, and then he talked about the fact that over 70% of the infections in Ghana could be prevented by hand washing, and he said a lot of things which actually came in handy during the pandemic. But my emphasis and then my question dwells on the fact that currently less than 5% of our GDP is allocated to funding public health and issues related to public health. So what are we doing? And since Professor Anefi is in the service sector, what are the policymakers doing to make sure that with time or within the shortest possible time, government will allocate a greater percentage of our GDP to public health? Because we realize that most of the countries that were doing very well in their response to the current pandemic were countries that had allocated much of their resources to public health. So what are we doing as a nation? Thank you.
I can see somebody in a kente shirt, or yes, I cannot see the face.
Thank you very much. My name is Esubontin, a junior member of the university. I want to be appreciative of the informative and educative lecture that has gone on here today. But my question comes from the fact that when Doctor was presenting, he presented so well, or he dwelt so much on partnership. And then the topic for this lecture was the nexus of politics. And I want to relate it to promoting good health. You know, in our clinical practice and clinical setting, we do realize that there are instances where more or less like there's some kind of hegemony or power struggle. I'm talking about the politics within our health sector. And one way or the other, these politics, this vehement politics in our sector limits how we give out quality and good health to the people in Ghana or in Africa or the whole world. And I want to ask, from the many years or the experience from being a doctor and also the many leadership portfolios, I want to ask how best we can resolve this hegemony I'm talking about in our sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll take the last comment for now from Professor Uzeje.
Doc, it's always inciting, sitting down and listening to you anytime you've given a lecture. I was reflecting. I didn't mean to ask a question, but I think I should do so now. And I didn't hear very much in your discussions the power play in all these things. So I heard the politics, I heard the partnerships, I heard all those things. But considering where we find ourselves in academia, when it comes to money, we are powerless. When it comes to knowledge, we are powerful. So I'm looking at the interplay. Is it the politician we should be reverting to be able to get the resources that we need to empower us to provide the information that could be pivotal to the processes we go through? Or how should this be handled? I say this in the context of the recognition the Ministry of Health is giving to the universities and set up a research coordination group Every time we have talked, the good science comes out. The work we want to do comes out. But the resources we need to carry anything through stops us from whatever we want to do. So please talk about the empowerment. Thank you very much.
I think that is a good note on which to end this session. I'll move to the next one after these comments. Yeah. Abi, if you can. Yeah. Please. Or maybe I can take the last one. Yes. Whilst he's noting his responses.
Thank you very much. Prof. My name is Greg Amanvegbe from School of Public Health, Hohwe. Thank you, Doc, for the exciting lectures. What I want to find out is that anytime research and policies come about, then politicians turn it around. It won't go to the desired end. For instance, when we started CHIPS was to reach people in the rural, and then it's like the community members were accepting, embracing, and trying to do all aspects to sustain it. All of a sudden, politicians have taken it over, made budget, like the popular saying, you say that in Mexico, air conditions make noise most of the time by cooling effect halfway. We observe that, and for now, our chiefs, like how it's intended, could not achieve that for the rural health. How can we take all this initiative that comes through research and policies from politicians and then get a desired effect from the services? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll take your comment as well before. Yes.
Yeah, Prof, I want to thank our visiting professor for the wonderful submission he made to us. First of all, he made a very profound statement by saying
Can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Henry Amatapi. I'm a citizen. The whole thing is looking too academic, so it is important for social relationship to be cultivated, because this forum is so important for all of us. Prof made a statement which I'm very proud of. He said, at the level of training of medical doctors, there is too much attention paid to academic work and so forth and so forth. It's so important that some of these people come out to become public health workers or directors at district hospitals, where we have a corrective unit also working at different levels. In some countries, what I know is that the relationship between the curative sector reports, when it goes to complement that of the public health sector, it provides a good result. But if, according to what he has told us now, the academic work takes too much emphasis from the kind of relationship that needs to be cultivated, I think the university here has a major role to play if that relationship to be well coordinated for the betterment of our people. Secondly, he's the head of COVID unit. Is he aware that many people are very skeptical about the injection? What kind of public education that needs to be provided to make it easier for citizens to, for example, I am so much scared, my children say I should not take it. Because they claim that within the age bracket I fall, I could die if I'm not careful. So I'm forced to listen to my children because they are reading a lot of manuals. So these are things that I want you to clear so that public education is not going down well with certain category of people, and it may endanger all the investment government is making to address this concern. Then lastly, I think I'm seeing the university as an important pillar that can help bridge the gap between politicians and the civil society. Yesterday we witnessed the movement of aircraft to the region by Toby Afeda, which I think everybody was happy. But there was not too much recognition as is done to Professor Atta here, where whatever he has achieved, everybody was happy. I think politicians must they must learn from you as intellectual group here, so that the kind of country's integration of our citizenry, but whatever they are doing and whatever they are also doing is so important. Because if I have not come here today, I would not know that all the sacrifices made by the late professor, and we followed him very closely, you have recognized it, and I'm happy. And at the same time, it is important to look out for our local resource people to come and give lecture. Because the last lecture I came here, which was by that foreign man, it was too academic and so abstract that I didn't hear exactly what he has said, because it's not related to our daily lives. So I want to plead that in future, emphasis might be placed on our great professor who has given us something I can go home and feel of his presence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will invite Dr. Samwaba to respond to some of the comments and questions. On the last one, I have the privilege of, the Vice Chancellor always has the privilege of nominating the speaker, of course, in consultation with the senior members around. And all things being equal, I have another opportunity to nominate my last one for next year. If you have thoughts, please let me know.
Thank you very much for your questions and comments. They appear to be a common trend. One is, are we investing enough in health, and are we investing in research? And I can sense as academia, you are in a way expressing your frustration about how, as a country, we're not investing enough in research. And of course, when you don't have that, the tendency is to blame the politician. There was once a president of Brazil. Before he became president, he was a leader of opposition, but before that, he was head of the TUC. And he used to say when he was head of the TUC, anytime there's a problem, he would blame government. And when he became leader of the opposition, anytime there's a problem, he would blame government. Then he became president. And anytime he had a problem, they blamed the United States. So we tended to blame our problems all to politicians. So I want to address one thing about research. Yes, it's true that as a country, we're not investing enough research, yet we're setting up academia, and it's all linked with the funding for research. And I know in recent times there have been attempts to set up some fund for research. Unless we do that, we're going to have the situation we have now where a lot of research are sponsored from outside. And that obviously is problematic. But the other part of it is, what are researchers doing to get funding? Our usual posture is we do the research, somebody must look for the money for us. If you are not looking for the money, you are wrong. But you, the same researcher, you look for funding from outside. How many proposals have our researchers presented to our politicians? Unless there's a problem and a fish is under stress, then we get some. What are we researchers doing to make it more attractive? I also want us to even look beyond just looking for government for resources. Most of our universities are getting some reasonable money, largely not from research, from student fees. There are many universities that make money from patents that things that they've developed, and that's where they get most of their money. And I'm hoping that we'll get to the stage where Ghanaian universities will not depend on government stipend in order to survive. How can we be creative? But of course, it will take some time to develop to that level, and I think the immediate answer is for us as a country to begin to appreciate that we need to invest in research. you are not going to advance unless we do more and more domestic local research. I will avoid the temptation to being drawn into COVID. Those of you who know me know I want to avoid that discussion, and that is why, even though I'm a coordinator, I don't talk about COVID. But the point one colleague made is, what do I think is responsible for some of the modest? It's because, fortunately for us, we had systems in place before COVID. You cannot do very well if you don't have systems before the emergency. So the emergency response is one aspect, but it's because we had some systems in place, because we have a very decentralized healthcare system. Unlike many other countries, things happen once there's a policy. Every district implements that. We had, and that required many years of investment into the public health infrastructure. We've also invested in a lot of health professionals. We have a number of very good, hardworking people, and they needed to be mobilized. But I think one of the biggest successes is the fact that we have not made it just a health response. Many countries are struggling because it was seen as a biomedical response. Let's put a number of experts together and they will find the answers. This is new. It's not appeared in the textbook. And many countries are struggling. And many of the countries that are struggling in the United States, UK, they've not been used to epidemics for a very long time. So they've dismantled their systems for dealing with that. In fact, the best country to deal with epidemics is DRC Congo, because they are battling with it every single day. And if you go to DRC Congo, how they display their data, you'll be surprised. So this is not something you learn from a textbook. Deal with emergency, you don't learn from a textbook, but the lesson is we should make sure that we have systems in place long before it happens. We need to invest in preparedness. The answer is preparedness, not just the emergency response. So as you can see, I've dodged the question a bit, but it's because I don't want to be discussing COVID for obvious reasons. The other point is to do with the culture of partnership. And Prof. Binker's question to some extent is our system fit for purpose in terms of partnership? And really, that is really one of the challenges that we have now. Our public systems are not being designed for partnership. University, you want to work with the ministry, and the first questions, they are not interested. They think they are helping you. You have a proposal, you are coming to collect our data to go and make money, and they are not always wrong. But there is not that openness in terms of discussing. You design your proposal, you didn't consult anybody from the ministry, you design your proposal, now that you've got the grant and you are looking for some data, you want them to be part of it. In politics, it can be great, and it's okay. But that is, unless you are part of that, you will not appreciate that. So one of the things is the exposure, but also what other countries have done is to blur the sharp distinction between academia and service. Somebody from the ministry wants to be a lecturer. We should provide that type of opportunity. Someone from academia wants to work in the ministry, even if it's a secondment, even if it's a sabbatical. And we don't do that, so we are talking across purposes. And I hope that is what you meant by how do we build this culture of partnership? How do we develop people who will appreciate the importance of research? For many years, the VC was head of research in the ministry. And he moved to academia. He understands it better. But unless you have people who can play in all this arena, so that is one. But the next thing is also to make research pay. People should be interested. We should get to the stage where people can spend all their life in research and still be able to look after their children. At the moment, unless you are involved in procurement, you are... So if people can say, I can have a career in research and still live a decent life. So there are a number of things that we can do to make research, but really the message I'm taking out from your questions is, how do we make research attractive and more sexier than what it is? Because really, our answer lies in research. And the issue of vaccine really tells you that we need to do our own research. We need to do our own data. One of the reasons why we're able to make some of the gains we've made in COVID is because we're doing our own local studies and local research. And you have a very good point about the vaccine hesitancy. People are really worried that the vaccine one is not as safe as it appears to be, that has been developed in just a fast rate, is coming from outside, and all type of stories. And the approach to this is not to demonize them and say you don't know what you are talking about. We haven't had the type of national conversation so that you can accept what and begin to appreciate people's fears and concerns. Nobody wants to die. So if they are convinced the vaccine can save their life, they will go for it. And the fact that people are skeptical is an invitation to have that type of national dialogue. Not a talk down, a scientist come and say, I think it's safe, so trust me, I'm a professor. Trust me, no. We need to listen more and more to the ordinary people, and I've been saying this, that really one of our biggest gap is what people call the risk communication. How do you communicate risk to the ordinary person? And we haven't quite designed the type of form to organize risk. It's not through a press conference or announcement and all that. You need to engage, focus group discussion. That type of approach is still not quite clear to us as a nation. We do that during the political season, but after the political season, there's no debate. But during the political season, people get engaged. Ghanaians want to be part of the solution. They understand when we don't have the resources, but they want to be part of it. So, thank you very much for these questions. They are not just questions for me to answer, but they are also to help me reflect and for all of us to look at that. And I think one of the things I would also suggest is, how do we organize debates? Not just an annual lecture. If it's made more interesting, I'm sure many people will take part of it. And that is why I'm really grateful that we have at least some of these debates. But this is something that should take place very often and in settings that people can relate to. There are many people who want to come, but our setting is such that they could not be part of this. So, thank you very much for these questions and comments.
I told you if you leave him from the 12th floor, he will land on his feet like a cat. So thank you very much, Dr. Samaba, for treating us to such an interesting and very practical lecture. My closing remarks, I will not attempt in any way to summarize the discussions that we've had here. I think these have been very, very illuminating. And it brings forth the fact that we need to understand our people to be able to provide the health needs of the people. And therefore, the social sciences, or what we have usually termed as the soft sciences, need to be incorporated in our training of our health professionals. Not only doctors, nurses, pharmacists, allied health scientists, they all need to have the soft skills, the human skills that deals with the human beings. And the fact that we live as people who are political beings, and we need to have partnerships to be able to survive this terrain. You cannot be an island on your own. We need to build partnerships to be able to survive if we are supposed to impact the community in which we live, which is mainly within the Volta region as a university. But we also need to impact the nation and internationally so that we become relevant both locally and internationally. Definitely there are challenges, but we believe that if we have a mind to work and we have the spirit of collaboration, we will be able to make a lot of progress. This is where we need to remind ourselves of the principles of the person who we celebrate today, Professor Evans Atta Mills, who was very humble and dedicated to this nation. And as has been said, we tend to remember him and appreciate him much better after he left us. It is my hope that this university will be able to raise people, students who will graduate and be able to go out there and affect the community with a human touch, so that they will affect the lives of these people and everybody will be so excited about your work. Yesterday at council meeting, I was sharing a very interesting story where we went to one of these numerous meetings that are being called to discuss acute adverse events following immunizations. And the EPI program manager had a report from Upper East Region. And when the report was read, he asked, who signed that report? And a name was mentioned. And then he said, if it is that person who signed the report, then the report is correct. And I was quite alarmed. He said, he's our best disease control officer as far as the COVID immunizations are concerned. We receive reports from everywhere, and his report is the best. Then along the line, he says, oh, VC, I think he graduated from UHAS. I said, oh, really? So he picked his phone and showed me a plaque. He was the best disease control class, graduating class, the best student in that class 2 years ago. He's one of the people who have had, we all don't go to class 1 to 6 and then secondary school to Prempe like Dr. Samaba and then end up in medical school. He came to do top-up. And it means they didn't make it straight away here. So he came and did top-up, and he was the best graduating student. And he had posted his plaque to the EPI program manager. And the EPI program manager said, I need to find something for this man to do. We need to find some scholarship for him. We need to affect our communities. And that, for me, is what is important. And it will take the effort of all of us to be selfless in our dealings, to be nation-minded in our thinking, and above all, to be very committed to whatever responsibility that we are empowered with, whether it involves procurement or not. And on that note, I want to thank Dr. Atta Samwaba sincerely for the good work that he has done for us this afternoon. Thank you very much. I think the Director of Public Affairs will be doing some acknowledgements. But before he does, before she comes to the stage, I would like to invite the representative of the Atta Mills Institute to give us 2 sentences.
Thank you, Professor Japon. Thank you, Professor Anefiba, Your Lordship, Council Chair, Professor Dinka, I salute. Togyo Banami. It was Monday, the 7th of February, 2011, when His Excellency President Mills drove from Accra to Sokode, Lokwe, to cut the sword for this university. As I watched Professor Japon show the cartoon strip, I saw myself in it. Professor Mills Koku, that's the level of mockery that he suffered. The Sambalats and the Tobiases never believed that this university will come alive. I stand here in the name of the Atta Mills Institute. This is it. This is it. I stand as Plato stood as a student of Socrates, and as Aristotle stood as a student of Plato. I'm a student of Atta Mills. He had self-belief. He had confidence. 10 years down the line, we are here. My solemn pledge, Professor Japon, is that Atta Mills Institute will support the university. And if you go back and read the speech I wrote for him, because I was his speechwriter, and I was happy when he was showing us the faculties. The 10th one is sports and medicine, sports and exercise. In that speech, President Mills spoke about the whole sports stadium and how he wanted it built to become a center of sports science and sports excellence, not only for Ghana, but for Africa. He was a sportsman par excellence, and I believe, Minister, with all due respect, it's a continuum. Let's see what we can do to give industry to give industry. Professor, you're talking about universities being self-financing for research. If we do that and build that sports stadium, not a sports stadium, but that sports facility as part of the allied sciences, I believe that this university, 10 years down the line, will be something else that we'll be talking about. I thank you for the opportunity. I'm most grateful. May God continue to bless this dear country of ours. And a nation that does not honor its heroes is not worth dying for. Let's continue to honor our heroes. Thank you very much.
What a very invigorating and fulfilling afternoon we have all had mentally. Some of us have been working for weeks planning this, and you plan the events and then you hope that they are worthy of the time that you put in. This by far has surpassed our expectations, and so it is in no small measure due to the fact that all of you here have made the time to come and join us. And so I would like to acknowledge the presence. Some of you have traveled far during many hours, up and down the bad roads that you have now witnessed for yourselves that our students and our staff have to deal with every day. But because of our dedication to the goal and the vision that lies ahead, they continue, they do it every day, they excel, and they go out of this place to make a name for themselves, for UHAS, and for this country. And so, with that, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the following esteemed people that have graced our auditorium today. I would like to acknowledge Professor Binka. I know that you're one of us, but I want to take the time out to thank you for always representing yourself and that vision that you shared in the beginning when some of us were not even here. And so we thank you for once more being here to support us. Professor Ben Onyenuga, Vice Chancellor of Wo Technical University, who is accompanied by the Registrar of Wo Technical University, Dr. Chris Ameho. You are both welcome. We want to acknowledge the presence of Professor Nana Jane Opoku Ajiman. It is so exciting to have you here with us, 2020 running mate of the NDC. And we know that this is not the end of it, but just the beginning of something that was started that will definitely materialize. So we thank you for making us proud to be women of Ghana. We acknowledge the presence of Dr. Kwesi Jokoto, Deputy Regional Director in charge of Public Health. Okay. I acknowledge Dr. Ashford Lecha, Regional Minister. All members of the UHAS Governing Council who are here with us, we acknowledge your presence. I would especially like to thank His Lordship, Dr. Sorry, so used to mentioning so many doctors. I would like to acknowledge the presence of His Lordship, Justice Dote. Thank you so much. Okay. Mr. Obed Adam, Acting Registrar, Evangelical Presbyterian University, along with Mr. Adam Kwesi Baka, President of the university. Mr. Ludwig Kloje, former personal assistant to Professor Atta Mills. You are welcome, sir. Major Francis Kaku of the 66th Artillery Regiment. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Hafiz Adam, representing the Minister of Health. You're welcome. Solomon Pamford, Esquire, Registrar at University of Energy and Natural Resources. Mr. Hardy Imuru Adam, Administrator, Vice Chancellor's Ghana. Thank you for your presence. Along with Mr. Fidelis Abuare, also of VCG. Okay. Honorable Samuel Okujoto Ablakwa, MP of North Tongu. Thank you, sir. We have Togbi Duto Jafet Amwaku Duto of Sokode, traditional area. We have Dr. Justice Moses Aheto, Department of Biostatistics, School of Public Health, University of Ghana. You're welcome. And with that, I would also like to invite all our VIP and invited guests and council members. There's a reception for everybody, but we will divide ourselves according to the following groupings. All the VIPs and invited guests and council members will convene in the council chamber building in the foyer and as well as the council chamber for the cocktail reception. Members of convocation will have that cocktail in front of the library block, and then all students present here who are much appreciated for also making the time out and coming to listen to this life-altering conversation, you will meet in the basement of this building, City Auditorium, for your refreshments. And on that note, I would like to call upon our own Professor Evelyn Ansah, who was chairman of the planning committee. She's going to say the closing prayer for us. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Maria. There's two sets of people that I think slipped us, and I want to acknowledge the numerous colleagues who are watching us on YouTube and on Zoom. There are several people who have been watching from the US and from many other countries on Zoom and on YouTube, and we say thank you to you too. Shall we rise for the closing prayer? Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but unto you be the glory forevermore. Father, we want to thank you for bringing us to the end of a very insightful and illuminating time. We thank you for all that we have learned during this time and the jewels that have been placed in the lives of leaders and future leaders of this country. We ask, oh God, that you continue with us even as we do other things and we progress even as a university. We ask that you take the name of this university to even greater heights than we have reached at this point. We ask, oh God, that you grant journey mercies to our friends, our colleagues who have traveled far and wide to be with us today. We thank you for all of what you have done in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. Shall we just be seated?
Hello?
Students, please go up the aisle and go to the basement. Go up. Don't use the side doors down. Go up and go to the basement. School officers, please, we are having rehearsals, so please stay back. School officers.